I'm a flight attendant. I know what it's like. And my entire essence of my being is to make sure that we all have a voice. Does not matter who you are, from whatever walk of life that you're from, your voice matters. And I took on the position at the time because I wanted to make sure the flight attendants knew that they had somebody in that position that wanted to give them a voice and wanted to make sure, hey, I was out there, even when I was in my position, I was going to different bases like, hey, what are your concerns? What do you care about?
Welcome, Romero Malone, to the Pay Me and Plane Tickets podcast. I'm excited to have you on, as you are a leader of all kinds, and I really wanted to dive into not only your own personal story, but also this amazing professional journey that you have embarked, whether intentionally or unintentionally, but you've taken it on with such class and. I'm ready to dive into that particular section of your life as well. And so, welcome, Romero, to Pay Me and Plane.
Oh, that's a very flattering introduction. Thank you, Jelani. I appreciate you having me on your wonderful podcast. I've seen the amazing work that you're doing and you're continuing to build. So I appreciate you inviting me so we can have some dialogue and have a conversation.
Exactly. Let's start kind of like a little bit in the early days. Where do you originally hail from?
I am originally born and raised from Memphis, Tennessee, city of blues, city of music, a city of good barbecue. So that's where I'm from.
That's wonderful. And was travel always in your life in your younger growing years, or did it kind of come at a later stage?
Um, it came early on in a way because the I was always enthralled by the fact of being able to travel eventually one day, right, on a broader scale. But I was first introduced to it when I was 16 and I did my first trip to Atlanta and to New York.
Oh,
And when I went to New York, that was just mind blowing because being a kid, being a high school student, especially at the time from Memphis, Tennessee, you're really not afforded opportunities to be able to travel. There are some people, that have never even been outside of the state of Tennessee or the city of Memphis. So to be able to travel and be able to go to Atlanta and then be able to get on a plane and go to New York, it was something new. It was something different for me. And I always knew that I wanted to do it just by those trips alone, from the process of it, but then actually being able to do it as a career was just mind blowing and mind boggling to me. So it was something that I was always curious about, but I never knew how to exactly get inside of the field of it until somebody presented the opportunity to me to be able to say, "Hey, why don't you become a flight attendant?" And I was like, "A flight attendant." It was something that was just different because I thought that you had to go to school for X amount of years so that you had to be you I thought it was just a select group of people. I didn't even know the process of it because nobody I had ever grew up or been around was a flight attendant or even worked in the airline industry at all, from maintenance, flight attendants, pilots, customer service. Nobody that I knew of was had been a part of the airline industry. So it was just very interesting to me when the opportunity when the idea was presented to me. And then it made me say, hey, this might be something I want to pursue or want to look at.
Interesting. And another thing is becoming a flight attendant is a very strenuous sort of pathway. So
Hmm.
it's not shocking to sort of hear others say, hey, they didn't know about it, and also because not many people are sharing how to actually achieve or become a flight attendant. So I could understand where it's like it was kind of not necessarily hidden purposely, but it was just kind of in the back. Like you just knew they existed, but you never really knew how to break through that door.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Something I had said earlier, seen and I viewed. It was just something very different.
Yeah.
It is always, being a flight attendant, or even when I would see it on TV and television, they were just very pristine and very put together in a way. And it was just always the ideology of it, right? I had seen it and it was something that I had always admired, but the process of it, that just was something that just never dawned on me that it was something that I could do.
Basically, it was kind of like just not having the vision of it yet. Like kind of you had to sort of like envision it first, or at least see somebody else do it, and kind of maybe start to believe that you actually can take on this profession.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. You see something and you get inspired by, and it's like, hey, maybe that could be something that I could venture off into. But because exposure is something powerful. When you're exposed to something, you get a chance to see how it operates and get a chance to see the process of something. You could be able to say, hey, this is something I maybe want to do. But it just had never dawned on me that it could be a career. Like I had always again saw it on television, but was just something very different for me.
so fill us in. Who was the person or maybe many individuals who kind of sponsored this interest or intrigue into flight attending, in which sort of granted you that first step in actually, sort of taking it into this world here.
Oh, Gillette, you're taking me back. It was several moves ago. I'm trying to I'm trying to remember. I'm
Uh,
honestly, I really don't even know, or I really don't even remember the per. You know what? Yes, I do. I was doing so at the time. I was a leasing agent. And then I had moved up to an assistant manager at the time for an apartment complex. And it was one of the consultants that was on property that brought it up to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about doing it? And it was just, I don't remember the essence of how we got into the dialogue or the conversation, but I think we were talking about traveling for some reason. We were talking about going on vacations. And the idea was presented to me at the time. And at this time, I'm in my early 20s, so I'm getting into the thing of just trying to build a career and, moving up in the corporate world. So from leasing consultant to assistant leasing manager. And I knew that was something that was routine. And I've always been somebody that was very ambitious and wanted to try things differently. So when he said it, I remember being curious about it at the time, and for some reason my wheels started spinning. And I asked him, "How did you get into it?" And he said, "Well, he knows about a company that's hiring." And when he said the company, or when he said the airline at the time, which was SkyWest, when he said it, I was very like, "What is SkyWest?" Because I thought he was saying Southwest at first. So it made me go do some due diligence to figure out what it was, because when he was bringing it up, he said they'll have an open house interview and all this and all that. And I asked him how did he know about it at the time, and he was telling me that one of his friends had went and did an interview with them. That they worked, I believe it was for a financial institution at the time, and I was really curious about it, and I wanted to know how to become a part of it. So after the idea was presented to me, I started doing my research, and then I realized, oh, it actually is a legitimate airline. And I didn't know anything at the time about mainline carriers or regional carriers because they both operate in a different capacity. So that sparked my curiosity, and then of course I went and interviewed, and then got the position at the time.
and so then eventually you had that sense of accomplishment when you finally go through all the training and you kind of get through all the different sections of materials that you have to, are required to, like, pass in order to be sort of accredited as a flight attendant. Was it like a sense of accomplishment, like, hey, you finally transitioned into a whole new field, from real estate to being in the skies is definitely different.
It was a big sense of accomplishment because that was so different for me at the time. And I remember my sister, who is now deceased, she's passed away now. She was so happy for me because it was something different. And it was also my decision. It was my choice to be able to venture off into this field and to be able to venture off into this career. But I remember at the time she was so happy because it was breaking a sense of normalcy that our family had had. Because again, there are people who have never even stepped outside of the city of Memphis or the state, let alone been able to travel the world to be able to see a lot of these amazing places. So she kind of vicariously lived through me at the time, and she was just so happy and so proud. So it was definitely a huge sense of accomplishment at the time to be able to step out and be able to venture off into a whole new world.
Beautiful, beautiful. And did you take advantage of the benefits of being a flight attendant in those early days and doing standby flights on the off reserve days, or were you kind of still playing it safe a little bit, just getting still getting used to the land?
I was still getting used to the land, but I did take advantage of it. Now, standby is not a joke, and for those, of course, that don't know what standby is, it's pretty much the available seat that is left on the plane that you're able to occupy as an employee or as a family member or as a friend of the family. So, standby was something very, it was a daunting task because it's something I was not used to, but I did get a chance to actually go travel and explore. I went to Paris, I believe, for my birthday, like for my 23rd birthday, I believe at the time. I'm telling my age, but
That's still an
I,
accomplishment.
listen, it was. It's my early 20s. So Paris was somewhere that I went. Then I went to London as well. Um, all of these things were non-revenue or standby. Amsterdam, outside of Greece. So I definitely took full advantage of my flight benefits.
Oh yeah, no, you have to. And that list you just named off is it's a dream list. I still have Greece on my bucket list. So I gotta catch up to you.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I still have some more places that I want to go to and want to go travel to. But yes, Greece is definitely a beautiful spot.
100%. Now, being a flight attendant, you do have these, the glitz and the glamour of it is, oh, you get to travel all these different places. And you just mentioned, you ever go to Paris for a little bit and Greece and things like that. But many don't know the true reality of being a flight attendant, in which you're constantly on the road, you're constantly at the beck and call of crew scheduling.
Hmm.
Also, are it sounds nice that you're flying, but the reality is you're in the sky, you're in a box for almost 40 hours, more than 40 hours a week, right?
I metal too.
Which is no, it's not the most uh luxurious way to live. What were those realities? How did you sort of respond to that in your first few years, taking on this new profession?
Well, I will tell you, Jelani, being a flight attendant was a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
It was very different in the capacity of you're not in an office, you're not working a typical 9 to 5. You're traveling these different places a lot of times that you're on the plane for an extended amount of hours, and you just have to really be adjusted mentally, not necessarily in the physicality part, which it helps, but mentally it's an adjustment because you're going from a sense of normalcy or normalcy to the sense of I am now doing something that requires me to change my entire philosophy. Because if you're somebody that's used to spending holidays, birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmases with your family, and now you're away for your first holiday, and you're not even with your family or the people that you love about, but you are helping make sure that other people are getting to their destinations, getting to be with their families or their significant others. It instills in you a sense of servitude, and you then become a part of somebody's journey. So it's more so the storytelling of it, because you meet so many people from different areas of life and different and all aspects from every area, every walk of life. And you really go into the point of, I'm now doing this not only because I love it, but it's also in a way it's helping connect other families. So you begin to go into that realm, and you begin to, of course, you have your amazing layovers at time, but it's more so about the experience and the discovery of everything. And it's different, especially like when you are a flight attendant, when you become a flight attendant, you have to transition to whatever base or domicile that you're assigned to. So you're going to a new city that you're probably unfamiliar with. You have to get to know the culture of the city, meet new people, figure out ways to get probably to and from the airport, transportation, housing, different things of that nature. It can be very challenging to try to get adjusted to their world if you are not mentally prepared for it. So it is definitely something that I did not take for granted. I had to do a lot of, is this something that I really, really want to do? And if so, what are my tools? And how can I be able to develop myself while I'm doing this career, while I'm operating in this capacity? So, yeah, becoming a flight attendant was definitely something um, that was different but rewarding.
And I like what you said. It was you were kind of observing the connecting of different people or and families as you're, as you're working. And that's kind of how you were seeing work for, quite some time because yeah, through all of the headaches of all the headaches that the job can bring, you kind of have like this small little glimmer of understanding, like, what you're serving is a connection of people, and almost at the sacrifice of your own connections with your family, or starting up a I guess a quasi new life in a new city in a new domicile, as you just mentioned. Uh,
Hmm.
but the connection piece is kind of the glimmer of hope, or the shine of it all, even though it might not be the best way to look at it, but it's one positive outlook on it.
Absolutely. And it is the essence of trying to identify where people are, where you are. It creates a sense of empathy in you in a way when you're relating to people from all different cultures and all different backgrounds and ethnicities and nationalities. You're you're building relations with people. It's so different to be able to, because when you're on that plane, we're everything. We are
Yeah.
medical care providers, we're teachers, we're counselors, we're parents.
Yeah.
Like flight
Peace
attendants,
officer.
right? Flight attendants are a conglomerate of a lot of different things when you're on that aircraft. Uh, because of the whatever the journey of a person is, flight attendants kind of fill in that void when they're on the plane. So you might be traveling and you might have, which I have had in my own personal experience, people that may be going to go bury a loved one, a mother, a sister, a child. And just being able to have conversations with them before even knowing the dynamic or the severity of whatever it is that they have going on in their personal lives, but just having a conversation with them and making them laugh. And then they tell you, hey, you don't know what this flight meant to me, just by you getting on, smiling, being nice, offering excellent customer service. And then they drop something on you like that and say, I'm going to go bury my sister. I'm going to go bury my cousin or bury my child. It it makes you very empathetic, but it also makes you appreciative that you were able to be a part of somebody's journey in their most trying times. Even if they're going to get married, or even if they're, going on their first vacation, there's a vast array of people that are just traveling to and from destinations. So the fact that we get a chance to help you cultivate that experience, it really is an honor.
Yeah, it's adding like humanity to the travel process. That's kind of how I've always
Absolutely.
flight attendants. They're the actual connection between point A to point B, and all that sort of wrapped in a in a pretty, at least in a nice box as well as it can be, you know. Uh,
Right.
and again, as you mentioned, you're the doctor, you're the police officer, you're the counselor, you're the teacher. You're pretty much a whole economy in the sky. And
Hmm.
uh, I've speaking for myself now. I've always had a high level of respect for what flight attendants bring to the travel process. It's not just booking and sitting on a seat and moving on with your life. There's a lot more to it than that. You I want to get into we mentioned all the things that flight attendants have to do, right? So it's all living on, and correct me if I'm wrong, a crew of two, three, maybe four people to 300 some either travel literate or travel illiterate individuals. You're kind of like, it's a lot that a flight attendant has to sort of maintain, and you're doing all of these. You have all these different duties and tasks. Executing it can be a challenge, and yet the flight crew executes well.
Right.
How did you sort of, as you were growing in this profession, start to go from, okay, I'm just a flight attendant, to now I'm kind of managing other new attendants, maybe even taking on more role and responsibility? Um, yeah, kind of just explain kind of like that growth into the management style, because you've been doing this for quite some time, and it's not an easy gig.
It is not. That's actually a really, really great question. I I realized something that, and this is maybe something different for people to consume, but when it comes down to leadership, or when it comes down to having a role, you can do it without a title. And even before I stepped into more so that aspect of taking on different leadership titles or positions within the airline that I was at, but just in life, I realized the fact that I had to realize first that my voice mattered. And then I had to realize that the same power is allotted to other people. So I began to start having conversations. How I actually got into everything was I started having conversations with people who are already a part of upper management and leadership positions, and beginning to build the dialogue and create the dialogue of what we were experiencing as flight attendants at the time. And when you do that, it gives you a different understanding, because when you step in those positions or roles yourself, you're able to then understand it from various points of views. So I transitioned my thinking, and of course, like I was soliciting advice from people that were in upper management or people that were in leadership positions, and then I wanted to take those type of tools and those type of dialogues and the type of maybe discrepancies that we had already as flight attendants, and I wanted to step inside of roles that would allow me to be able to understand it from various points of views. So I think that's where I kind of came from and how I started to build that, because I had a genuine sense of caring for the flight attendants, because I'm a flight attendant and I know what we experience on a day in, day out basis. When you're on reserve and you have to live that life and you're on call, and you have to be up at all types of mornings and afternoons and evenings to get to the airport. It can be challenging. It can be challenging navigating the wonderful world of aviation, or the wonderful world of the airline industry as we know it. So I wanted to see it from different points of views and different perspectives, not only from a flight attendant perspective, but from a leadership perspective. So I started moving around in a vast array of positions. And one of them also was a recruiter, because I wanted to see the intake process of it. How are we bringing flight attendants in? How are we allowed, like, what's the mindset? What's the ideology behind it? What are we using? What tools are we using in order to be able to select the flight attendant, to be able to say this could be a great career choice for you, or that this person may be the best potential candidate? So once you begin to kind of scale it and then identify from all areas or all perspectives, it kind of helps you grow and advance in the career.
Wow. And that's interesting because you basically networked with upper management. Then you also had like this data gathering and also data understanding when you were communicating with other flight attendants and what stressors they're going through, or sort of what, I guess, good, bad, or ugly, or even indifferent that they're kind of going through. And then also you took that extra step and also started to look at the recruiting process of understanding, okay, who are the personalities that we're actually accepting in? Because being a flight attendant, you have to be of a certain, again, you have to have a certain mindset, or at least a sort of attitude and an approach to being a flight attendant. So that is a very important piece of determining, hey, can X individual even take on this particular life change? So you're kind of doing all of this. Is this kind of what led you into uh, looking into the SkyWest In-Flight Association? Was this sort of like the building block? Is like, hey, look, I have the connection to the upper management and also the understanding of the groundwork and the recruiting work. Hey, I'm the perfect foil to sort of sit in this particular seat.
I believe that some of those things led to me, even though I interviewed for the position of SIA president in October of 2020. But before I took on that position, I was already having conversations and dialogue with upper management about the things that were happening, not only within it, not only within the airline industry, within our airline, but just in society as a whole, because we have to remember what it looked like back in 2020. We had a lot of things that were happening going on in the world. The George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter movement was at an all-time high. So the morale at the company was not where it could have been at the time. And I saw that. I saw that from the flight attendants. I saw it from customers. I saw again the different perspectives and what we were feeling all together as a collective. And it was at that time that I decided to make the decision that, hey, I want to know what type of company that I am working for. And because at the time, the company was not speaking up on a lot of things that were happening, even though it was affecting the morale of the flight attendants. We didn't have any type of recognition just to be able to say, hey, we're there for you, we're thinking of you, and this is how we can be able to move forward as a company and as a culture, as a society. So I started to notice just certain things that were lacking, even in the representation, that there was not a lot of minority leadership. Um, I started to notice that there wasn't any type of, you know, hey, it's Black History Month, or it's Hispanic Heritage Month, or it's Women's History Month, or it's Pride Month. It was just a lack of diversity and inclusion. And it just really made me say, what type of company am I working for? And how can I, just as a flight attendant without any type of title, be able to be most impactful? So I took those concerns and grievances to management at the time and said, hey, this is what your employees, this is what your flight attendants, at least from my perspective, this is what we're feeling. And how can we work together or try to work together in order to be able to create a better environment, a better culture for all of us? So after that, that's when I went. When I saw the position was open in October, it was September, October, one of them, because I know I took on the position in October of 2020. So when I saw the position was open, I flew out to Las Vegas to go interview for the position because I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to be one of the ones talking about it. You know, you have those employees, you have the ones that come to work and just be like, I don't like this and I don't like that, but they're not doing anything to change it or using their voice to be able to try to create or make effective change. So when I saw the position was open and it was the highest position, it was the president, I was curious. I was like, I know I have a background in leadership. I know that I have a voice. How can I use this to be able to help cultivate change here in my airline? So I went and, of course, applied for the position, and I was elected the first Black, youngest LGBTQ plus president in the organization's history.
Massive accomplishment and a massive moment for the airline industry in itself, you know. So
Mm,
it's like, yeah, for yourself too, but like also just the next person in line can see, hey, this individual did it too. Perhaps I can as well in their own right. So it's also for the industry as a whole. So
right.
to take everything you were saying, you basically were seeing a morale decrease upon your analysis. And
Hmm.
you raised these concerns, and these concerns kind of bottled up into, hey, look, there's a position that can kind of answer these concerns I have. As I'm speaking as you, but like, I can be the one to elicit the proper change because I have gathered this information and because I have a wherewithal of understanding where the weak areas are in morale, and also we're stronger, and perhaps we can even be better, right? The
Right.
my other question is workplace environment outside of morale, but was there also a touch on maybe the scheduling process, as you mentioned, reserve? Was there something also, the crew lounges, or even uh, delays, and also pay structure? Was that also in your thought process at the time? Because 2020 wasn't also, it was, yes, there was race issues, but there was also travel was at the going through its real uh you know uh humbling time.
Right. Absolutely. There were so many things that were on the minds of flight attendants, including stability.
Right.
But I always tell people it is the commitment to stability in the midst of fluctuation that determines the person.
Right.
It is trying to identify how can I be stable in a crisis? Because we're looking at the time period in which we're in at the time, where you have people that are uncertain if they're going to even have a job. Traveling is trying to make a comeback from little to no passengers flying at the time to they're trying to rebuild and instill back the trust in customers to be able to choose different carriers and airlines to be able to say, hey, come back and fly with us. We know you want to get to your destination, and some people aren't going to drive everywhere. So we're trying to reinstill the safety aspect and being able to say, come back and fly with us. So we're looking at all these different variations at the time. And it's being able to say, hey, how can we make a commitment to stability in the midst of fluctuation that's happening right now within our country, within our airline? So it was developing different tactics and tools and techniques in order to be able to say, this is how we can come back. All your the success of any airline or the success of any person, in my view, is the ability to be able to come back. We know what caused We know what caused it. We know it was the pandemic, and we know we were in the middle of a crisis. But how do you manage the crisis? And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to talk about is your ability to be able to come back from anything. So this was not something that had been done previously. Even when 9/11 happened, and we know the severity of their situation, this was something that was on an entirely different scale. So we had to then develop different things for our flight attendants to be able to say, hey, this is what we can do. I remember at the time it was a VTO that was offered, which was something that I was telling everybody, make sure you take this opportunity to take time out for yourself because flying was at an all-time low then. But to the airline's credit at the time, they were able to, and the organization as a whole, um, we had to come up with ways to be able to make sure that the flight attendants were taken care of. And that was always my that was always my biggest concern is, how can we as an organization, leadership, whatever sector that you're in, how can it be most beneficial to flight attendants at the time, because it was so much that was going on. So we started looking at things and started creating different things to be able to make sure that the flight attendants could still be able to have a sense of normalcy after everything was done. Even though the pandemic changed the world as we knew it at the time, we still had to create new techniques and new ways to be able to say, this is how we can move forward.
Understood, understood. And so you are kind of working on this action plan. You have all these action items that are actually being executed properly. You're putting together sort of like a good response to answer all these different concerns that you're mentioning. And it's supposed to just benefit the flight attendants, right? What were
Mhm.
those first, I guess, few months as sitting president of SIA? What were they like? Was it as expected, or did you uh, run into headwinds very early on?
Um, I think headwinds would be understated. That's actually being nice.
Okay,
More
so
like
so both.
tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes. Um,
So it was it pretty much was on impact. You
it
were starting
was
to see the sky wasn't as blue as at least it was pictured to be.
no, there was when I first started, there was a lot of trepidation. Um, I received a lot of pushback, not from the flight attendants, because the flight attendants were most supportive when I entered into the role because I really think and genuinely believe that they knew that I had their best interest at heart because, again, I'm a flight attendant. I know what it's like. And my entire essence of my being is to make sure that we all have a voice. Does not matter who you are, from whatever walk of life that you're from, your voice matters. And I took on the position at the time because I wanted to make sure the flight attendants knew that they had somebody in that position that wanted to give them a voice and wanted to make sure, hey, I was out there, even when I was in my position, I was going to different bases like, hey, what are your concerns? What do you care about? That was always my number one thing. Like, what do you care about? Like, what's something that would make life easier here for you as an employee and as a flight attendant? And I do not believe at the time I had the support that I could have rendered from the board that I had at the time. Because again, I'm coming in, as I mentioned earlier, as the first Black gay male in a predominantly middle-aged Caucasian board of women. So that was something very different and very new for them because they had never had anyone of my caliber on the board as president or on the board as a member in general. So my views and my ideologies and the way that I thought and processed things, because I'm processing it now, not only from a leadership perspective, but from a flight attendant perspective, from a millennial perspective, from someone that wants to come in and incorporate values and ethics and all type of different qualities to be able to make the board a standard. But I started to notice certain things. I started to notice that the board was not as unified as it may have appeared to be on the exterior. I started to notice that there wasn't a support system in place in order to help push a lot of these things through for the flight attendants. I started to notice that there was a lack of separation, in my opinion, at the time of the company and of the SIA board as an organization. Because if I am president and if we are a board and we are here for the needs of our flight attendants in order to be able to cultivate a culture that includes diversity and inclusion, that we're negotiating for the wages and the benefits and for the healthcare of these employees, we should be doing that from the flight attendant perspective because that is who we are first.
Right.
But when I started to notice, it would be various different times that even management will call in the middle of a meeting and they would have policies and proposals, but we had things that were waiting on them for months at a time. And I started to notice, like, where is the negotiation aspect of it? Like, where is the like where's our stance? Because you have something that you want to be put into place that can be passed immediately, but when it came down to our policies and things that we wanted, it was always a dragging of the foot. It was always a stalling. You had flight attendants who were, or you had board members at the time who were very friendly with management and were having conversations with management. I just felt like that wasn't the most ethical thing at the time. So my idea was, I thought that this is supposed to be a union or a union labor organization that's supposed to be entirely or completely separate from management. But I started to notice that, in my opinion and in my view at the time, that that wasn't the case.
Yeah, in a way, the SIA is supposed to operate as a in-house, uh, in-house flight attendant unions, a bit akin to the auto workers union for those who work for GM, Ford, and
Hmm.
alike. But this is sort of SkyWest's version of a union that's kind of built within. If is that the right sort of formula for the SkyWest In-Flight Association as it's presented?
In my opinion, it would be viewed as a company union, actually. Um, and that's just my honest opinion. It's just, to me, it comes off as a company union, or what we know or what we know in legal terms as a yellow union.
Uh,
And for those that may not know what a yellow union or a company union is, it's pretty much an organization that's dominated or unduly influenced by an employer, and it can be independent because the company makes most of the decisions in the aspect of it has a large majority of influence. And that was actually something that was outlawed in 1935 by the National Labor Relations Act. So it's actually something illegal to have. You're not even supposed to be able to have or operate in that capacity because you're supposed to be considered independent. And that's where we begin to blur the lines at, because there was no transparency, or there was a lack of transparency. Are we a union or are we not a union? What does the Department of Labor identify the organization to be? Right? You all are calling yourselves, or the organization is calling themselves a labor organization, but in the eyes of the Department of Labor, it's being considered as a union. So therefore, you need to be following union laws and union protocols. Um, so that's where we begin to kind of where things begin to unravel and trying to identify what it is that we're actually dealing with.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, pretty much the power of somebody just like yourself would have had the enforcement of the government behind them with labor laws and labor regulations to sort of make the changes or even suggestions that you were making for the flight attendants. But because it's a quote unquote a yellow union, and it's wholly owned by an organization, therein lies the conflict of interest of where does this whole thing sit? And that's kind of what you were dealing with from day one of understanding, okay, what can I really enforce? And is this even enforceable if we are just or
Hmm.
if we're uncategorized or miscategorized? Is there this whole thing is where the confusion is. And I think this shows a bit of gray in SkyWest's operation.
You have Gillette. I think you summed that up perfectly. It's a gray area, and it is trying to identify where is the transparency, because now when you become a labor union, or which the government has now stepped in and say, hey, like, this is how you all need to be operating, then there where lies the discrepancies, right? And the Department of Labor has stepped in and said, hey, you all operate as a local labor organization. Why are you calling yourselves national? Which is something I believe that they have taken on now. The organization's taken on. They're calling themselves national. National would be something like the AFA, the Association of Flight Attendants. They have a national umbrella, and that's how they're viewed in the eyes of the government, because it's a parent company, or it's a parent organization, a parent union, and then it has subsidiaries under it in different locations. SIA would not be considered that. And the government has stepped in and said, why are y'all using this terminology? You're not even considered national. You operate in a local labor capacity. So you need to be using those terms as such. And what does the organization then do? They double down on the fact that it says, one, we are national, despite what it is that you're telling us as the federal government. We don't care how y'all identify. This is what I'm getting. We don't care how you are identifying it to us. This is what we consider ourselves to be. And they do the exact opposite of what the government is telling them, to do. So you start to question the competency, like, of the people at this time, because the government is stepping in and telling you that you operate in a local labor capacity, but you're still using the terminologies. And I think they updated the bylaws and constitutions to be like 94 page or something, with 94 pages or updates using the word national. And the government has stepped in and said, hey, you all don't need to be using this, because that's not what you are. So it's a lot of gray areas. I will say that. But the flight attendants don't want gray areas. They want transparency. They want someone to be able to say enough is enough. And it starts with us, like, as flight attendants ourselves, to be able to say enough is enough at this point. Like, we're tired of the games, we're tired of the gray areas, we're tired of the lack of transparency. We want clear, concise, punctual answers on who we are and what we operate as. And I think that that is the viewpoint of the flight attendants at this point.
I get it. Right. And you know what? Flight attendants don't deserve gray areas because when you guys are working, you either operate clear, it's binary. Either you're doing a good job and the flight, is operating smoothly or not. There is no
Right.
gray area in flying. And if that's how the airlines want to that if that's what the airlines are expecting of the flight attendants, it should be reciprocated, uh, at least in terms of the labor relation between the flight attendants and the airline company, in this case SkyWest, right?
Absolutely.
So now that you've had this role for a minute and you're you're figuring you're seeing the chess pieces a little bit. When does it start to turn against you? So you're a leader of the people. You're kind of going on this crusade to rightfully fight for your kin, but now you're starting to notice that the organization is starting to turn its head a little bit against their own, which you're supposed to be a part of, but now they're turning their heads against the likes of yourself. How do you start to feel at that moment? What's your sort of temperature at that time?
The temperature at the time is very, very cold. I think when I initially took on that position and took on the role, they more so, I think they wanted me to be more of a figurehead and not an actual leader and someone that operated in that capacity. When I came in, it was something new for me, this position in this role. And one of my biggest things was, where's the transparency? And I wanted to make sure that we would operate in a capacity that was truly separate from management. So before me, the company union president at the time was best friends with one of the senior level managers. They had been seen going on a vacation together, going on a trip together. And that raised a red flag for me coming into the position, because why is union, or why is this organization that's supposed to be there representing our flight attendants, why are they going on vacations with the senior, vice president? So I was very concerned about that. So the board had operated in a certain capacity for years. And they always use the phrase, to use the term, well, we've been negotiating for flight attendants since 1999. I always used to say, well, if that's how you all been doing it since 1999, then we seriously have a problem, because that lets us know how long that this has been going on, uh, to the flight attendants' discredit.
Right.
So I started to do things very differently when I entered into my position. And I made sure that, hey, we are going to get things done for our flight attendants. And there's not going to be any ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if management is not scheduled, because I'm a firm believer in Robert's Rules of Order. And that's that. I'm a part of another organization called Memphis Impact, or the Academia Society, and that's how we go by. We go by the Robert's Rules of Orders there. So that's all I've been familiar with from different organizations and committees I have been on. And I did not notice that. I did not know that before my position, they didn't even know what that was. And that was very alarming for me, because I wanted to know where the order was. And how are you all getting things done when you all can't even do simplicity? Like, just making sure that there is an agenda established and that we're going over it. So that was very concerning, and that was very alarming for me. Um, when management would call in during certain meetings, I started to say no. Unless they're on the agenda, unless they are scheduled to be a part of this conversation today, absolutely not. If they are on the agenda and they have something to propose, then we can invite them in. But this is our time for the flight attendants to be able to discuss the policies and procedures and different things that concern our flight attendants as an organization. So no, they are not going to be calling in the middle of our. I don't care that they have a policy that they want to be passed or that they could have passed this week. No, we have business to discuss right now, because we want to make sure that the things that we are doing is at the benefit of the flight attendants and not at the behest of management. That was my entire ideology on it. And when they started to see me pushing back in that capacity, it was like, I wanted to be completely separate from management, and this is what I want to get done for our flight attendants. And hey, here at SkyWest, the probationary period is 1 year. Why can't we do six months? Like, why can't we be industry standard across the board? When I started asking those questions and started really, really pushing back against management, the conversations began to move at that time. So they stopped having conversations with me and they started having conversations with my vice president at the time. And that ultimately led to me being forced to resign from my position.
Wow. Pretty much a an overstep. That's kind of what happened there. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because
Okay.
because again, that the vice president at the time, or my vice president at the time, that was somebody that was very friendly again with management. They the organization had operated in this capacity for years.
Yeah.
So anytime the management said something, they were moving their feet. And it was always the okay, because one, in my opinions, of course, we are being funded by the airline, the board, which is not supposed to happen because the board is supposed to have its own funds, but we're being funded by them. So a lot of times the board members were scared to speak out on certain things because of fear of their job or retaliation. Like if I oppose this policy and this is something that management wants to oppose, like can they come back and can they then say that, hey, we wanted you all to do this and you all didn't do it, so now I may have fear of my employment? Those were concerns. So it's hard to truly be able to be a separate entity where you're having to deal with those concerns. But for me, I was just more so like, no, if it costs me a job or anything, at least I'll go down fighting because I'll go down fighting for what's right and what I believe in. And that's for our flight attendants. So, those were major concerns that some of the that I feel like that some, not all, but that some of the actual board members did have. But the other ones who were operating at the behest of upper level management, they were all on board for whatever management wanted to do. And that just was not going to be that just was not going to be feasible for me. And I don't believe that that was true transparency. So they started pushing back hard against me. Um,
Yeah.
though even in a racial capacity at times. Um, from things that were said and verbiage that was said and uttered to me about, my background and where I was from. They were really, really like, no, this is not what we signed up for.
Yeah. Pretty much the firm turns against you, and the pitchforks are now being pointed in your direction.
Absolutely.
So, it's being done in order to sort of remove any any anybody who can be a question to how they have their system set up right now as
Correct.
it is, right?
Hmm.
So, which is very very ironic, because you're taking this fight against for the flight attendants, and they're kind of going against you, and you represent the flight attendants. So it's kind of like, hey, I don't know if that's the smartest decision that they should really make. But with all that being said, uh, you're one person, right?
Hmm.
How are you dealing with that type of pressure at that time? How are you dealing with? I mean, right now, not even at that time. How are you dealing with that type of? Uh, I don't know if I'd term it scrutiny, but I would say it's an attack. How are you dealing with that type of attack mentally? Uh, you know, because we all see again, we see the highs and lows of travel. And
Hmm.
travel is although it is a fun business, it's still political, and there are politics involved of it. So how are you handling it right now?
Absolutely. Um, I realized something in that process of mentally trying to make sure that I was okay, even with the name calling and the scrutiny, I realized people will call you what they want you to live like, right? People will try to identify you or try to place you in a box based off of what it is that their perception of you is. But even with their perceptions, I still had to keep intact and remember and know who I was as an individual. So at the time, I'm processing this in the way that I'm hurt, but I'm liberated. And I am whole to the point that I know that I went into the position with the best intentions and that eventually the truth will come out about everything. So I always was hopeful in that aspect that one day things would be brought to the light. But sometimes the best thing for you to do is to process it, remain silent for the time being, and then when the time is right, when the time is right, you be able to speak your truth and
Right.
be able to really tell your story. At the time, it was sadness. It was really I was really hurt at the time because again, I'm young and unfamiliar with this environment. I've always been vocal about the rights. Like even when I was in high school and I was at Carver High School, I had organized a peaceful protest of high school students of us walking out because of lack of air conditioning and school fundings, and we weren't having the same equal educational opportunities as other schools. I've always been passionate about things that are right and things that we are supposed to do in order to exercise our First Amendment right. So I've always been vocal in that aspect, but this was a different type of giant. This was something that I was unfamiliar with to the capacity that I had an entire board, and not only a board that was against me, um, with the exception of a few, but not only the board, but a company that was rooted and deeply rooted on the control that they had over an organization. So that was a different type of fight. But what made me stay in the fight was the flight attendants. They were the biggest supporters. They were the ones that were advocating for me. And I always tell people, and they ask me now, why are you, speaking out now? Because I say it's the art of reciprocity. It's giving and receiving. And I think in biblical terms, they say, give and it shall come back to you. The flight attendants gave me a voice when I didn't have a voice. They made sure the flight attendants were telling my story. They were defending me. They were defending my character. They was like, I remember reading the comments at the time when everything had came out, when racial text messages had came out about how that the board didn't want a I think what did the text say? A black sire president. When those things came out, the flight attendants started a Justice for Romero campaign. They started saying, hey, we need to hear Romero's side of the story. Let him out of that NDA so that we can hear his perspective and hear what happened. The flight attendants were the ones that were coming to my aid and they gave me a voice. I didn't have to say anything at the time, even though I wanted to so bad because I felt like the flight attendants needed to know the truth on the corruption that was happening behind the scenes. But they were the ones that were riding for me. And they were the ones that were saying, hey, we want his truth. We seen the videos that he's done. We seen the messages that he's done. We see the type of change that he's trying to implement here at the airline, and we need that. We need to know what happened. So I didn't have to say anything at the time because they gave me a voice when I didn't have one. So now I am returning that. I am making sure to use my voice to be able to tell the SkyWest flight attendants that, hey, you all need a legitimate labor union to represent you and your best interest. So I've come back now to give them a voice because they gave me a voice when I didn't have one.
Wow, it's almost a form of vindication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost a form of vindication where you're actually now, thankfully, you've done you fought the good fight, and now uh, it's almost as if the attendants or even others are sticking up for what you stood for at SIA and what you stand for as a person, but what you stood for at SIA specifically. Uh,
Hmm.
that was beautifully put. I actually I really felt everything that you were saying there in terms of just how you were managing it through the thick of the storm. You know, and I know it's still kind of cloudy, but you know, through those like first early moments, how you were handling it, it was you expressed it, you know, very, very, very clearly. Um, so what's next for you? What's the next sort of journey on this everlasting roller coaster?
Man, Jelani, I'll tell you right now, we are excited. We are actively building our union at SkyWest Airlines with the AFA, with the Association of Flight attendants across all the different nationalities, races, ages, millennials, Gen Z, you name it. They are using their voices right now to say that we want a legitimate national labor union and one that calls themselves a union, actually, and not a company union, but one that truly is separate from management, where the flight attendants have the power and have a voice. Our OOS time team has done an amazing job of keeping the momentum going, and we want to be able to continue to expound upon that. We want the flight attendants to know they don't have to be silent and they don't have to be scared of signing an authorization card out of fear of management. Their information is confidential, but it is essential in making sure we have the necessary numbers needed in order to vote in our union. So I'm just urging all of our flight attendants to get those authorization cards signed and show them that we mean business and that we want a legitimate voice.
That's
And the AFA can present that.
that's right. You guys mean business. It's no joke in flying, man.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But the flight attendants, they are excited. They are mobilizing and they are determined to have a voice. And I am excited to be helping and aiding in that process of getting the flight attendants legitimately unionized at SkyWest.
Man, I'm rooting for you. We're rooting for you. This crew's rooting for you over here. Uh, it's it's overdue. It's long overdue.
It is.
And like you mentioned earlier, you know, they were getting, you know, the boards and management were getting way too cozy. Look, it's supposed to be Tom and Jerry. That's the way
Hmm.
you're not supposed to be on Tom and Jerry are not supposed to be on vacation with each other. So there's supposed, you know, that's the sign of a healthy working relationship there. But look, I know you have a busy day ahead of you. Definitely gotta get you back for part two once the mountaintop has been reached. We can really celebrate. You know,
Let me use my millennial term. We're gonna have to spin the block.
that's right. That's right.
We are definitely going to have to do this again, Jelani. Yes, absolutely. It's been a
Exactly.
pleasure.
Before we let you go, we ask these quick pay me and plane ticket questions to sort of gauge where you fall on the spectrum here, and being that you're a well seasoned traveler, let's see where you land. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
So, well, actually, I guess you technically are, but if you were to be paid in plane tickets, which airline are you choosing?
I'm gonna go with United Airlines. I'll go with
United.
that. I heard they're a great airline, so I'm gonna go with United.
All right. I'm a United baby, so that warms my heart right there.
Let's go. Let's go with United.
When you do travel, is it Airbnb or hotel?
Oh, good question. Depends. If I'm traveling with more than one person, I like to do Airbnbs for the space and capacity. But if it's just me, then sometimes I like to do hotels. So it depends. But that's a word. Airbnb.
All right, Airbnb. Okay. No, but your response actually is on par with most. It depends on the type of trip. Uh,
Hmm.
when you do travel, do you have like a particular travel credit card or debit card you use for points and miles?
Yes, I do have a Mileage Plus credit card. Um, so yeah, that's the one that I primarily use when I'm traveling, when I'm on my vacations, the Mileage Plus.
Got you. When you do travel, let's say not for work, your vacations, is it carry on or check bag?
Oh, carry on. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, I can travel heavy when I'm traveling heavy and I'm on vacation. Nah, I'm not even gonna say that. I rarely check a bag unless I really, really have to, because the whole process
Yeah.
is it be a daunting task. But I'm gonna say carry on.
Okay. Your team carry on, and
Yeah,
most times, your team carry on going and coming back, you buy a lot of stuff. So you know.
right. And then I'm a flight attendant too, so we can't just be checking our bags to everywhere. I gotta make sure the bag is on the plane with me. So carry on, most definitely.
All right, we talked about the good things about travel. Do you have a travel pet peeve?
I do. Uh, and again, I guess I'm watching it from a different perspective. But please wait until the seatbelt sign is turned off before you get up. For your safety as well as the safety of others around you, please wait until we're parked at the gate. We know that you have a tight connection, but so do 78 other people on the aircraft. So and we can't get there, or we can't go anywhere until the jet bridge is connected to the plane. So I think that's my number one pet peeve when I see people just jump up afterwards. And then if you got a nice flight attendant, you would have somebody that make the announcement and be able to say, hey, we know that there's tight connections, but for those of you that have a delayed flight or have a later flight, if you would allow those who have a tighter connection to be able to proceed to the front of the aircraft so that they can be able to make those connections, we'll greatly appreciate that. So I think that that is the number one pet peeve that I have when people jump up, and sometimes the plane's not even parked all the way. And they'll get up and we're still texting. We're like, sir, sir, ma'am, this is not safe for you to do right now. So that's my pet peeve right there.
That's it. You know what? Come up. It's come up. You're not the first one.
Oh, I'm not the first one. Okay, so I'm
Uh,
not in this by myself.
Not by yourself. That fight, you got a whole crew with you. When you do travel, are you window, aisle, or dare I say middle seat?
Oh, I love a window seat.
Okay, the
I
dreamer.
think yes. Who was that? Erica Badu window seat. Don't want, and preferably don't want nobody sitting next to. Yeah, but I love a good. I really, really do. I really love a good window seat to be, you know, just watching the view, watching the clouds. Even though I'm probably gonna be asleep 10 minutes afterwards, but I like the view.
Got you. Understand. Okay. Uh, One location for the rest of your life to travel to. Where is that and why?
Ooh, one location. That's sad.
Now here's the thing. There's a cop out answer, but I'm gonna let you struggle for a little bit. Let you struggle.
One place to travel to for the rest of my life.
Let me know when you're ready. If you're ready to give up.
Oh man, that is. Oh, I be getting bored. So one place for the rest of my life. I'm trying to see. Um, I give up.
All
On
right.
this one, I can't even make that one. I give up because there's so many places.
So many. There's so many, right?
Right.
Your answer would be Earth. That's where you travel to. You
Oh man. That should have definitely been my cop out answer. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I will remember that for the future.
when you come back next time, you'll be able to spew it back at me. So,
Most definitely. I'll remember that with Earth. That's a good one.
all right, last one. Where are you heading to next? I know you travel for work, but I guess do you have any personal trip coming up soon or anything?
Yes. My big birthday is coming up. This just all aligns with the conversation I just had yesterday. My big birthday is coming up in January, and I am going to Rome, Italy for my birthday. I have not been to Italy yet, so I am excited. I had it planned before the pandemic hit, and of course, we know what happened with that, and everything fell through, flights and stuff. But I'm now venturing out and going on this epic journey, this epic travel experience to go to Rome, Italy. I'm super excited to get there, to see the Colosseums, to explore the culture, and also get some real good, authentic Italian food. So that is my next place that I am going.
That sounds exciting. I'm gonna say I think you're gonna love it. I haven't been to Rome. I've been to other parts of Italy, but I think you're gonna love it, honestly. That's
Oh
amazing.
man.
Oh, but to have had that ticket since post-pandemic, sorry, pre-pandemic is impressive.
Hmm. When I tell you I'm so ready, like I'm super excited about this trip because I just know that it's my birthday. And what a way to bring my birthday in by spending it somewhere that I've wanted to be. Because I went to London. I had already experienced London. Rome is going to be next, and then I also am planning a trip to Africa next year as well to go to the motherland. So, those
You-
Rome and Johannesburg, I'm coming.
You're gonna love Johannesburg and Cape Town. So you
Oh,
never want tips. We're here for you. I'm here for you.
oh, most definitely. I'm going to definitely be reaching out.
Well, Romero, it's been wonderful having you on. I've learned so much. I know the listeners are going to learn a lot, and also I think, given the amount of leadership qualities that you have, and also the uh, discipline throughout everything that you not only experienced but been going through, I think a greater appreciation not only to flight attendants, but also to just travelers in general has been gained through this conversation here.
Oh, oh wow. I listen. I appreciate everything that you just got done saying, Jelani. I my only job or my only essence right now is to educate and inspire. Just to educate and inspire people to be able to, make their own decisions, enjoy their travel journeys, and be able to live life in the way that you seem best fit for you. So I appreciate you saying that. And I also appreciate you taking out the time to be able to have me on here, seeing what you are building and seeing what you are growing, because, it takes courage to grow. It's something different. So seeing, how your podcast is doing and listening to your input from your standpoint as a traveler, but also as a blogger, as a podcaster, it is truly commendable. So I appreciate you wholeheartedly for your words and just for you being you as a person. I really do.
Hey man, you got to feed what's feeding you. You guys are the ones that make the world go around here. So I appreciate the kind words, but it's right back at you, man.
I appreciate it.